Let's welcome our next speaker here, Tibi Covaci. I think you can, best you introduce yourself.
Yes, I will. Thank you all. And hello everyone. Welcome to this, those strange times, I would say. I'm still happy that we are able to do that. I would say this is the first time I'm doing a in-person meeting since Corona. It's the first time I'm doing a Meetup since 2 years ago. I think last time I've done one was in Ukraine. I had about 120 people. It's a little bit of a difference, but still. My name is Hbg Works. I'm actually working for Microsoft. I know I still talk about Microsoft in the third person, like it's like it's still a day for me. I start to work for Microsoft 1st of May. I worked for 2 months and then I went on a paternity leave for another 2, and then I actually start working on 1st of September. So I'm very new in my role. I used to be a developer. I've done programming since 1991, actually a little bit earlier. I started 87 with building my own computers. By 1991 I started doing it a little bit more, I would say, semi-professional. And then I moved to Sweden in 1996 to work as a developer, and I've been working as a developer most of my life. And back in 2010, I think, Microsoft invited me to a program called Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, which meant they were very happy for me, that I was doing a lot of work for free, and I was promoting their technology, something like you want, and you get it, okay. And 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I'd been invited into another program called Regional Directors, which is a little bit more exclusive. The reason for that was because I was bringing a lot of business to Microsoft, and I was working with big customers. Some of my customers were spending, between €500,000 and €1 million per month on Azure. So, of course, Microsoft got noticed. And because of that, I got to meet Satya Nadella. That was actually a good thing for me. But the highlight of my career is still the fact that my daughters got to meet Satya Nadella. So they went with me to build. They were the youngest participants ever. Satya heard about that and he wanted to meet them. So although I'm working for Microsoft, I'm not here to talk about Microsoft especially. I think I'm going to talk about GitHub Actions. GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so I'm lying, partially. But the point was not to actually talk about the technology itself. I haven't, I'm in a position right now where I'm actually, my role is to try to, to foster the communities, to make sure that we still have a running community. And the reason for that was because, or the reason I think I got hired is because 10 years ago, there was more than that. There was a group here called, in Sweden, called Svenuk, Swedish .NET User Group, which almost died. And together with Alan Smith, we revived that group. Actually, that was in 2009. And when we started, we had 30 people. In 2 years' time, we got up to 2,000. And then I left Sweden and moved to Bermuda. And then after Bermuda, I moved to Cayman. And after Cayman, I've been in London, then I've been in Romania, then I've been in Tenerife. And finally, 2018, my wife said to me, I'm pregnant again. And if you want another baby, then we need to move back to Sweden. And of all the places, she chose Helsingborg. So I'm actually living here in Helsingborg, 5 minutes from here. I'm actually very happy that Microsoft wanted me to work for them, because for a very long time, all the efforts were done and were concentrated in Stockholm. Everything, all the communities, investments and all the things that were done by Microsoft. I was almost saying what they were doing is like, yes, what we were doing, was done there. But tonight we're here for, because I want to tell you a different story. I want to tell you how I got to look at GitHub Actions and why I actually, this is something I discovered, I would say about 6-7 months ago, starting to look at possibilities. One of the I would say the capital sins that Johan did at the end of his presentation was to right-click deploy. Friends don't let friends do right-click deploy. That's what you should not do ever, ever, ever. But about, I would say, 6 months ago, or maybe 7 months ago, there was a hackathon And I was, I just said, I want to join as a mentor. I want to help other people. If they have an idea, I want to help them to do something. And so it happened, a friend of mine that I haven't seen in a very long while was doing a project there. And the project was in Node.js. And I said, you know what, let me have a look. And I started looking at what he was doing. We were starting to talk. And then, of course, I did exactly what I said you should not do. Right-click, deploy. But that was actually a Node.js application, so it wasn't anything that had to do with anything. He was deploying that application in a DigitalOcean. He had a DigitalOcean, I don't know, something, and he was deploying the application there, and everything was working, so there was nothing fancy. But the application itself was a peer-to-peer application, and it needed a server just for signaling, for establishing a communication channel. So what his idea was, it's way too complicated for people to communicate with each other. I mean, if you want to use Zoom, Teams, whatever, I mean, it's not, it's not product specific, but most of the products have this problem. You need a lot of setup. So why not make it very simple? So I can start a meeting, I get a link, and then I can send you the link. And the link just opens in any browser you want, and then you can just start communicating with people. And then as soon as the last people leaves the room, there is no trace ever of something happening. Actually, the only thing kept in the server is, that there is a certain meeting still happens, and that's it. But the communication and all the data and everything goes between the two parties or end parties involved in the communication. So the very first thing I've done, I took, and this is something very simple. It's not the application that we were working on. The code is on GitHub. You can look at it. I will tell you exactly. It's public repository. It's open source. If you want to contribute or work on it, it's it's free to do. So one of the things that I was doing actually, I took the Node.js application, and if you ever done any Node, you know that the first thing you always do is npm install, and then npm build, or then npm run, or npm start, just to see how the application is running. Now, it says that it's already installed, so that's good, because otherwise it will take quite some time. And then if I say npm, let's say, start, it's just a simple application. Being the Node application, it runs on port 3000. And this was some of the Azure samples of very, very simple Node applications. So that's the reason I'm showing you this, is because I want to show you how I've done that the very first time and how I started my journey. So what I was thinking now is like, what? Yeah, I can see that the editor of my choice was always code, and code has those Azure Tools in here. So with Azure Tools, you can go in here, you can connect it to your Azure account, and once you connect it to Azure account, depending on what kind of extensions you are installing, so I have extensions for app services, for functions, for storage, for virtual machines. Let's hope that, yes, it does get connection. So I said, I want to deploy that as an Azure App Service. So what I need to do, it's just go in here and say, I want to create a new web application. Okay, let me do that again. Let me try this. It says where I have the file, and what do I want to do? I want to use an existing application, or I want to create a new web application. Let me create a new web application, because there are 9 steps, and they are very simple to follow. So I would say demo Hbg GHA. So that's the name. It tests to see that the name is unique and nobody else is using it. It's happy with that, and I press enter. It says, where do you want to place that? I will place it into a resource group. What kind of operating system I want? Of course I want performance, so I choose Linux. Next thing, what kind of application am I running? I would say this is actually a Node 12, long-term supported. If I want to use an existing server, yes, I don't really care. But if I want to create a new app service plan with a new server and place it wherever in another place, I would choose that one. I choose standard here, although I don't really need standard, and I will show you, because the application I have created, at the end of the day, I'm using basic. I can't use free because I want to use SSL, certificates. But otherwise, I could have gone with all the way down to free tier. And I can say use this server. Once this is created, it asks me if I want to get any application insights, so I get to see, like Yuan was looking at all the requests and errors and stuff like that. Let's not overcomplicate for this demo. And then once I'm done with this, it will create the application. And it will take a little bit of time to do the deployment. It's zipping all the files, it's building all the files, it's zipping them, uploading the zip file, and then it deploys it inside the web application. So this is more or less the right-click deploy. Of course, once I've done that, it will ask me now, do you want to use that, from all eternity, from now on, or do you just want to, you want to create a new one every single time? Knowing that this is my application, I would say, yeah, you know what, whatever, deploy it there. This is not what I'm going to do in the future anyway, but this is my very first deployment. So now, once I've done that, I'm thinking I want to do an integration. So the one thing I wanted to do actually was, I was thinking, because I didn't see I didn't know about the GitHub Actions, and the reason I didn't know was actually they were very new at the time. I went inside my portal here, let me go in here actually, and this is a different application. Let me take this. Resource groups, I have the demo actions. So the one that I created is this one. So once this application is created, because I created and I'm using actually, because I'm using basic or standard, or I'm using the level that I'm paying, I can go to the deployment center. So once you go to the deployment center, it gives you a few choices. It says what is the source control that you want to use. So they have, Microsoft has Azure Repos, GitHub, Local Git, or Bitbucket. And I chose GitHub. I've done it in the past, and it was using webhooks, and what it was doing actually, it was monitoring every single time. It was monitoring a GitHub repository, and as soon as you would deploy something, it will start the job of getting the things behind the curtains and deploy the files and start working. Now, if it is the first time you are choosing GitHub, it will give you a choice to connect your GitHub account. Now, here already shows Tibor 19 because this is my GitHub account, and I already connected that to my Azure subscription. So it is connected to my Azure subscriptions, and it knows that. So by pressing this button and say, okay, I want to take that, and I want to continue. I can choose as well change account if I know that this is not the account I want to use. But this is actually my account. And in the past, we had app service build service. That was Kudu, and the Kudu was actually using that GitHub webhook, downloading the files and doing all the things. But I want instead a GitHub action. Now, the same thing that I'm doing now, actually, I can do the other way around. I can go into a GitHub repository and say, you know what, I want you to now create a GitHub action. And it looks at my repository and says, this looks to me an awful lot like a Node.js. What do you want to do? And if you look, there is actually a ready-made workflow that says deploy a Node.js to Azure. So I can actually do it in both ways. But I chose this one, and I said this is a GitHub action. And this one actually was in preview until recently, but now it's released. Now, it has information about my user. It lists all my organizations that I'm a member of, and I have access to different, different repositories. I take my private account, and in there I know that I have a repository that it's called Node Express App or something like that. Let's see, Node Express App. Okay, and then which branch I want to use from that particular from that particular repository. I chose this one. It shows me this is the workflow that we are going to create. And now I think if I have something to complain about, it's the choice of YAML, because this is not a programming language. This is a space sensitive kind of thingy that some people want to call it a language, and I don't know. It's not my cup of tea. Let me put it this way. So it says here, what you want to do actually, what you configured so far is that whenever someone pushes on the main branch, you would do some jobs. One of the jobs is build and deploy. Actually, it's only one job. I can split it and I can say I want a build job, I want a deploy job, I can create dependencies and so on and so on. But it's usually the very simple one. It says, I want to start you by checking out the code. Again, this already knows because this one would be deployed in my GitHub repository. So this one would be part of my my code. and then it says, okay, you want to set up Node.js. This one actually happens inside a container, so it would already be a container based on this Ubuntu latest image. It will check out my code. It will install Node version 12, so the latest version of Node, and then it will run those 3 commands. And once this is done with that, it says, I want them to deploy the web application using the second version of the web app deploy action. Now, this is a cool thing. Actually, if you look at this one, this is nothing more, but that's what I found out doing this thing. So let me press, so one more thing I want to show here actually. In order for me to be able to write stuff into Azure, it will be needing some secrets, you know, like a published profile. And that's, again, it's done automatically by my Azure subscription in collaboration with GitHub. It reads the published profile and then it publishes that as a secret inside inside my profile. So saying finish now, it will deploy this workflow. And this workflow, it will automatically run directly, and it will show me, okay, we run that once, and this is the result of, you know, what happened. So let me take the thing that I copied. It's actually nothing more than just a github.com/Azure Web Apps Deploy. It's nothing more than just a repository that is an Azure action. So this is what it looks like. It has a YAML file that actually specifies the parameters and what is expecting. So whenever you want to use an action and you know about it, you can go in here and start looking at that. So that was my very first step. Now, starting to look at my application, I realized that we have a lot of things in there that makes no sense. Like, I have a lot of static files. Why would I deploy my static files into a web application when I can deploy them as static assets? There were no static web apps at the time when I started working on that actually. Static web apps were still in preview, but we still had static websites. So, let me show you. So this is actually now, if I go and do a refresh on my repository, you would see that I get now a new folder called Github Workflows. And inside that folder, I have a workflow called main demo Hbg GHA YAML. It's using a secret here. It's something that starts with 862, finishes with D92. I can show you that in my settings, actually, for this particular repository, I have some secrets. And those secrets I have actually, it's 862, D92, so this is the secret. I can update it, I cannot see it. So there is no way for me to see it. Once in there, that's it. So I established a connection. I know I can actually push that. The only way for me to use that secret is to somehow get into the action and then trying to publish that and using that kind of action. So that would be one way of doing it. Now, the talk is called CI/CD. So what we are doing here actually is nothing more than continuous integration. Because what I'm doing actually, as soon as I'm putting, or actually it's a combination between the two of them. So what I'm doing, as soon as I'm pushing something, I'm building it. I'm happy that it builds, and because it builds, then I will deploy it to Azure. Now, the way you normally do that, you actually split it in two. You create one for the push, but not on the master. So on any other, or main actually, any other branch than main, as soon as you do a push, then you start running your continuous integration, and then on a pull request, you do, when the pull request is approved, then you do the continuous deployment. That's when I'm actually moving stuff in production. So now, what I've done in the other, part, the application itself, it's called Colloquium. So I have a workflow in here, and that's what I started doing. I was looking, because I had different scenarios. So for instance, I want to do a master on the deploy. So whenever someone does something or does the deployment on the master branch, I want to take this and do some job with it. So the very first thing I'm doing, I'm saying, I want to do a checkout, I want to set up Node, I want to I want to install the dependencies. Now, in my application, I need to use WebSockets, and in order for me to do that, and if I want to make the application a little bit more smart, I'm using environment variables, so I'm actually injecting things in my build process on the on the stuff that I'm deploying on Azure. I'm injecting some of the things that I need to have. The same goes for application instrumentation key. this is kind of a half secret because at the end of the day everybody can see it inside a JavaScript file, but it is a way for me to, to kind of not give that to whoever wants to see it. Then I can do the deploy, the web application, but then the other thing I had to do was to deploy to Azure Storage. Now, believe it or not, Microsoft does not have an out-of-the-box deployment to an Azure static website. So what I found was a .NET Core application written by someone, and the way that was doing the deployment was to go and get the code, compile the .NET Core application, then go and take my artifacts and then start deploying those artifacts to an Azure Storage account. I'm like, seriously? That's not really, it's not really a very good way of doing it. So I looked at how it works, and then at the end of the day I said, you know what, I can use the same parameters, but I can write that from scratch using Node. And I would show you the Node code for that because it's actually trivial, it's very simple. So then I created, the next one was to deploy to Azure Storage. So I have my web application, the client part goes into Azure Storage, and then another thing that I had to do actually, what I wanted to do was to refresh my CDN. Using Azure Storage account, you can use a static website and then you can use CDN. And with the CDN, you move the assets much closer to the user, and then you improve the speed of the application. And then again, when we're going to talk about the money, I will show you how much I pay for the whole thing, and the application. And I'm not using free. It's I'm still paying for some stuff. But regardless. So I wanted to do something here, and I said, you know what? I want to actually purge the CDN. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that I don't get old data in my storage account, and I don't want to wait for the storage account to realize that something happened. So again, and this is now pretty straightforward. Every time when we do something, we have a guard against, the master, so you cannot actually do direct. So the only way to put stuff in master is via a pull request. But as soon as something ends up being pushed in master via a pull request, then this one gets to run and this one gets to automatically update our application. And we have stuff like incrementing the version number as part of the build process in here, and everything. Now, if you look at the application in here, actually, application is pretty straightforward. It has a, when the first time you go in there, it says you need to allow the use of camera and the video. And I'm actually, if I put a name, and I would say, demo Hbg, and then I would say start. So if someone takes this link now and just go to this page, they will see exactly this application. I think someone did that already. Huh? See? And it has a lot of features like recording, screen sharing, texts, and stuff like that. So it's I'm not selling the application or anything. It's completely free. But the whole thing is that actually you don't need any resources. The only thing I'm needing is just to make a request, making sure that I have a room, and then I'm sending the connection on, and then that's it. It doesn't need anything. And it has support for end-to-end encryption. People in the same, you can lock the room. Huh? You should come up, or? See? Can you see my picture?
Sorry,
did you use the demo-hbg, yes?
Yes.
So, yeah?
It helps if you spell it correctly.
I did spell it correctly, yeah.
Oh no, me.
Okay. I think you do not allow the camera or something on your phone, but it's okay.
I think I did.
Okay. I'll leave it there in the back. You'll still be able to to see it. Okay, so again, doing all of this, that helped us, and believe it or not, it took me about 2 days to create this this whole process. Now, I told you that I found myself in a situation where I had to deploy the things manually. So let me copy this one here. So if we follow the same rule like before, this one should be the name of a of a GitHub repository. So Tibor 19 static website deploy, it's actually it's an action in here. And the action, I chose to write it in JavaScript. Actually, I could have done TypeScript, but it's very simple. So I have, I'm looking at the files. I say, which files do you need to upload? Once I found the file, I'm establishing a connection using a connection string. The connection string I'm sending in as a parameter. So actually, I'm getting that via a secret that it's sending to my action. So I can guard those. I look at all the things, and then set the properties accordingly. Then I take each and every file, and if if the container does not exist, I'm creating it. If it does exist, then I'm specifying if I want to have a static website or not. And then if I say I want to remove the existing file, I can remove the existing files from there. If not, then I will just start uploading files. If it's a folder, then I create the folder, and then I upload the file. And it's as simple as that. So this was actually, again, was inspired by a .NET Core application that it was, the guy was deploying it by actually building it every single time. Now, the way I'm doing it, it's, I would say, a little bit better, because I'm compiling that first. So when you want to do the deployment, you already have this ready compiled. So I have this main YAML. So again, this is actually a GitHub action that's using an action on itself in order to be able to do the deployment and all the things that needs to be done. So when I'm doing that, it says, okay, so I have master, and I'm looking at the releases. And then whenever you do that, you do the install, and then you run build, and then I'll have a dist folder that I can use actually, and this is the one that will allow me to run my application. So running the application now, or running this, it's not, it's not a problem anymore. So let me go in here now and show you, for instance, the one that I was showing you a little bit earlier. I can go in here. Let's see, settings, JSON. Oh yeah, those are changed because of other reasons. But I can go into my application, so I can show you. Actually, let me go back in here. We have an application here up and running. And if I go and look at the application, because I need to show you that it works actually. I have my GitHub, Azure Rocks, and then we have Node Express app demo. This is what I can change in here. So this is what I got deployed on an Azure Websites.net. Going back to code, I can change that and say demo Hbg. I can save the file. I can commit the file. Like this. Okay, changes. Yes, stage and commit directly. And then as soon as I'm pushing those changes, because I have a workflow, that will trigger automatically. It says, yeah, I need to do a pull, and the reason for that is because I actually made some changes first in there. I added the new command. There are no conflicts, so once I'm done with that, I can do a push. So I can show you what I got was actually this. And this is the one that got created by Azure for me to be able to run it automatically. So this is what I showed you. Okay, so coming back in here, I have my GitHub repository. We can look at the actions. We can see that the action is actually running right now. It shows me we are doing a build and a deploy. And as soon as everything is ready, and everything is deployed to a web app, I compile it, I'm happy with it, or it is happy with it. It does a package zip deployment. And if we go back to the application itself and look at it, which would be this one, then we are going to see here that the link is a little bit changed, but this one is still working. Okay, so if we look at our Azure resources that I got to deploy, I could have used I would say a more expensive version. If I would have used, for instance, for a web application, the standard version, I would have got access to deployment slots. Now, deployment slot allowed me to actually do a hot swap while my application is running. I really didn't care about that. It's not that important that I need to 24/7, 365 access to the application. So I would say let's go with the basic one. The basic allows me anyway to have several applications. So both my development application and my production applications are running actually on the same machine on Azure. So I'm paying only once the amount of money, so that's not a problem. And they are deployed in there. I'm using a CDN. Again, this is used in order to be able to get the data. And I have a storage account in here, which is this one where I'm deploying. I have where is it? I have a static website in here. And then inside my static website, I can actually go directly to this address, or I can publish this website through the CDN. So if we look at the containers, there is a .web. This is actually my static website, and all my files are here. So those are being static files. It means I don't care. I have a dynamic application that I'm using on the other side, and that makes it very, very nice. In theory, now I could use as well Azure Functions. The reason I didn't use Azure Functions to begin with was because at the time Azure Functions had no support for WebSockets. And even now they might have support, but it's still quite cumbersome. And I was thinking, what? I don't want for people to take, up to 5 minutes to get a function call to warm up, just because I don't want to pay for basics. So I would say, just use this as is. If I look at how much do I pay for that, I think per month it's something like 300 kroner. Let me see, cost analysis. It shows me, this is what I have in this particular resource group. Forecast 150 kroner per month. Sorry, I was lying. Not even 300. No, so this is how much would I pay in a whole month for the application. And regardless of how much I'm using it, because it's everything, the only thing that might actually increase the cost if this application, it becomes very popular and I get a lot of CDN data transfer out, then that might actually increase the cost of my application. But everything else, it's a static cost. And even the increase in the cost, it's a little bit, it's not a problem. The one thing that was actually the most expensive in the whole thing was the was the certificate. For the start certificate that I'm using for this particular domain, I had to pay 2,000 Swedish kronor. But that was it. Everything else, I could have chosen one per domain, but then I said, why would I bother? So one other thing I've done when I looked at the CDN, for instance, I created rules in the CDN that everything goes redirected to the same domain. So everything actually goes to one single endpoint. So this is my endpoint, and let's see. I have 4 different domains that I'm listening for, but actually I created a rule here, and I say whenever something is not colloquium.se, I want you to send it to colloquium.se. That's it. So, you know what? I really love those. And what I figured out is that we, Microsoft, we have a site called lab.github.com. Now, if you go to that one, you will see that there are actually hands-on labs for you to get used, to learn about the stuff. So I started one called DevOps GitHub with Actions. I started about a month ago. I cleared the first 3 ones in like 2 hours. They are very nicely done. Everything is done with the help of issues. So, you would have an issue, you need to read it, you need to go and fix it. As soon as you fix it, there is an automation behind the curtains, and that automation would actually see, have you done what we asked you? If you've done what we asked you, we show you the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And then actually you get to create your own actions, you get to create your own workflows, you get to do integration with Azure. So there is the first action. You do continuous integration, you do publishing of GitHub packages. So GitHub has built-in support for packages now. It has built-in support for containers. So it has actually a Docker Hub built-in, so where you can have those. I would say, unfortunately, 2 months ago, all those containers were private. Fortunately, now they realize that that was a mistake, so they open it. So this is actually a public, or you choose if you want to have it as a public package or not when you publish containers. If you want to deploy to AWS, you can do a deployment to AWS. There is actually another, way of doing it, and they showed that. How you can write your own actions, how you can create, the Docker container actions, and so on. So I would really recommend you look at those, because it really helps you get a better understanding and get you started. There is one thing that I really do not like about it, is that the documentation for creating your own GitHub Actions, listen från vara. In other words, it's not there. So there is not. It's very hard to find the information you need, in order to get to do your own GitHub Actions. So it took a little bit longer than I was expected, but there is a template I figured out after that, that you can get started. There's a template called, GitHub Action with TypeScript. So you get everything, the whole boilerplate created for you. But the documentation itself, it's pretty, you have to look at other actions in order to be able to create your own. So that's what I ended up doing. But it's really, it's really straightforward at the end of the day. It works pretty neat, and everything is completely integrated. We do have some open hacks that we organize internally, where you do a lot of big deployments, and that was a very interesting one to do the whole thing. You got to choose between Azure DevOps and GitHub, and when I got the choice, I chose actually GitHub and wanted to see how it works. It does work, but and it is challenging, but it's actually very, very nice. So again, I like them. Have a look at them. That being said, I think we have 20 minutes for Q&A. I don't have to stay there, to talk the whole hour. Ask me anything. Yes?
Yeah. You said the biggest cost was purchasing a certificate.
Yes.
Wasn't it possible to have it automatically created in a CDN for you? Because the CDN can...
So the CDN is now configured to use it, and it would be, because it's deployed in my Key Vault, it would be automatically renewed every year. But it's the cost of the certificate itself. So in order for you to buy a certificate, it costs you money if you buy it through Azure. I could have done it through Let's Encrypt, but...
Yes. Yeah, I think that, Let's Encrypt, or maybe because Azure CDN provides also, it can provide the certificate for you.
Yes, you can put, you can bring your own if you want, but I was thinking, if I have everything, and I will tell you this, I knew that I will lose my MVP, and I already got from Microsoft about $12,000 to spend on Azure, and I managed in like 8 months to spend about $3,000. So I had, I still had $9,000 that I would lose in a month time, and I'm like, let's buy two. So I bought Colloquium.net and Colloquium.se for $200 each. So it's like, yeah, you know what? That was what I did. But otherwise, I totally agree with you. It's the fact, what I like with that is that it's fully, it's fully integrated. Like you get everything, and then you get the renewal, and that. So next year I'll actually have to pay out of my pocket. I can't express it on Microsoft, but it's done automatically.
Yeah.
With the Let's Encrypt, you have to do. I mean, there are a lot of guides on the internet. You can use functions. You can use third-party codes to do the things for you. But you know what? Yeah.
It's definitely extra work.
Yes, it is, and it was worth for me the less time that I had to spend on it. Other questions? Let me see, if we look at the cost.
You said that it had support also for Docker and Docker Hub.
Yeah.
So basically you can create an action that builds a Docker container and deploys it to Docker Hub.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yes. So if you look at the lab.github.com, that's where you'll get those, because You know, those are actually exactly those things. You can go through those labs, and it takes you step by step how you can build it, how you can build a container. You know, like you create a Docker file, you specify what you want. You know, you have the build part, you have the deploy part, and so on. So it's actually super neat.
I was thinking also about how to, you know, you had your solution, how to copy files to static websites.
Yeah.
But is there an access to tool like AZ copy or so?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So you can use AZ copy to copy jobs.
So
maybe it's difficult to read.
no, it's no, I'm thinking about it. It's actually it is possible. AZ copy requires you to have a key. So that means, you know, in order for me to be able, either I need to create a SAS key to put it in there somehow, or I need to do a login, and then once I'm logging into Azure, I need to actually request a key with AZ CLI, and then once I got the access key, then I can use that.
I was thinking if you could use this secret thing.
Yeah, I can show actually something along those lines what I've done. So you see here I have an AZ login. So AZ login actually that's what it does. It logs into Azure, and then you can run whatever AZ command you want.
Yes.
So yeah, I could have done it exactly with that, as you say. So I'm actually at this point here I'm logged in into Azure. Of course, I could have the one other command I should have run after that would have been AZ logout. You know, because right now if you think about it, I'm having a container hanging, you know, actually an image hanging that, you know, if someone will pick that up and it will continue running that one, it still has the key, you know, the session key configured at the end of this one. This is something that might be interesting to, you know, now talking about it, you know. You can do an AZ logout here, and then you know for sure that you don't have any credentials leaks or anything. Other questions?
The stance between GitHub Actions and DevOps, Azure DevOps?
It depends.
Well, the messaging from Microsoft.
The messaging from Microsoft is GitHub. And I'll tell you why. GitHub actually, so they do a lot of innovation. There are a lot of things happening with GitHub for enterprises. Now, if you are a customer that invested heavily, or anyone that invested heavily in Azure already, and you have an Azure subscription, and you have all the things running in Azure, including the pipelines, and you use Azure boards and everything, then the recommendation is keep on doing it. Microsoft is not going to obsolete Azure DevOps. So, you know what, don't take me on that, don't quote me. I never heard anything, I don't know any, that they plan on doing that. However, if you are new, or if you are or if you are heavily invested into open source, and if you want to start with something, the recommendation is go to GitHub for enterprises. Yes?
We have been told that they will deprecate the repos. That's an official statement, but it's many years from now. I think they say, like in 5 years, the work will start to deprecate the DevOps repos.
So I'll tell you something. About 10 years, so this rings some bells. 10 years ago, we had exactly the same story about Silverlight, that they were planning to still have it alive for another 7 years. You know, it didn't matter when people start hearing that the Silverlight is going to be gone. You know, like 2 years later, nobody was using it, and Microsoft saw no reasons to continue developing it. I think they were supporting it 7 years as they promised, you know, or even 10. I'm not really sure if Silverlight is supported anymore or not. Or some, I don't remember the exact number, but at the time when we were talking about in 2010, like, oh my God, 2017 or 2020, that's so far away that nobody cares about that. Now, again, I think so one thing that happened internally at Microsoft, GitHub and Azure DevOps now are one team. So there used to be two teams, and the problem with two teams, you know, doing innovation in the same space, it's that they will always diverge, you know, because there are people thinking differently. I'm not saying that having two people thinking in two different ways, you know, put them in the same team and put them together, they will agree. You know, I can give you Angular as an example. You know, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, but still I think it's better than having two products coming from the same company going in two different directions. So the messaging, like like you said, Michael, is indeed go GitHub. You know, if you're not heavily invested in Azure DevOps, and if you're not heavily invested in Azure, you know, and you just don't want to use anything outside, you know, Azure, then by all means. Now there is another issue with Azure DevOps. It's the fact that you're bound to Azure data centers. While with GitHub, you can actually have your own hosted version of GitHub, and that's why a lot of people are looking at GitHub, and they would prefer that because they prefer to run the things internally and deploy all the things internally and use their own, you know, their own infrastructure for sensitive things like code and, you know, bugs in their codes and stuff like that. Yes?
The thing I really like with DevOps is that it's so separated what you build and what you deploy. So you first create an artifact, and then you can have that artifact exactly the same compiled stuff moving through a test environment and then going out to a bunch of production environment if you have that. Do you have the same possibilities here?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So it is, I mean, actually you have the notion of artifacts, and if you look to the labs, you'll see exactly that. That's the way it is done. So the continuous integration part, it goes on actually building the stuff and testing and making sure that you pass all the tests, while the continuous deployment stuff, it looks at the artifacts that you created, you know, with the integration, and when you do the, you know, when you say now deploy it, it will do the deployment.
So there is an artifact store
Yes,
in GitHub
yes,
too?
yes, yes, it is.
Do you have the possibility to publish nuggets packages?
Yes,
There
we
too?
do.
Ah, great.
Yeah. They are owned by Microsoft, aren't they?
Yeah, but it might not
And
be.
NPM, and so they're like, Microsoft owns quite a big stack right now on the open source. Or we own, sorry, I don't know how to say, I don't know what's the correct term here. So no more questions? Thank you.